Welcome to the Simply Real Life podcast. I'm Sarah, the founder of Simply Real Health, here to help you simplify, amplify, and elevate your life. This show is for those of you who want the real talk on how to live a more intuitive and intentional life, a life that's healthy from the inside out, and one that feels more effortless, aligned, simple, and more alive. We cover it all, from health, wellness, mindset, motherhood, daily habits and rituals, to business and relationships, creativity and growth, and tiny tricks to feeling your best, and the energetics behind it all filled with personal stories, unfiltered conversations, and of course, answering all of your burning questions, all in the way of simplicity and keeping it real, so that you can create your own version of your healthiest life. Let's do it. Hi, you guys, and welcome back to the show. This is also a welcome back to myself because we took 3 weeks off of recording the podcast and producing it, and it was amazing. It was just the best. I love those last 2 weeks of summer. I know that for some people, it's more like the end of the year, the end of December, the last 2 weeks, all the holidays, and they get cozy, and that there's a lot more time for reflection and family. To me, the last 2 weeks of August is that time. It's my favorite time of the year where summer just feels like it's at its peak, and everything about it, even the air, just feels warm and delicious, and you can smell the blackberries growing, and it's sunny, and it's just the peak of summer, which is my favorite season. So I took some time off to just enjoy it and to be with my kids a little bit more and to go to the beach. And it does happen to be June's birthday, my sister's birthday, and my birthday. And so it's always been this big celebration plus rest, truly just getting a little bit more space. And so I told my team the last couple of weeks, let's just take this time off as much as we can. We will, obviously still be working and getting done the things that we need to do and taking care of our people and our clients. But with all of the other stuff, let's just take a little pause so that everybody on the team could do the same. So maybe you missed us. Maybe you didn't even notice. Isn't that so true? Sometimes we make such a big deal out of, I'm taking some time, and we almost feel bad. And I think one of the best things I have learned in the last 2 years, specifically so, is not to feel bad about that, not to feel bad about having time and space to rest, to be more present in my life, to not always be thinking about work or connected to work. And it is tricky. It's so tricky. I feel like, especially for what I do, because it is my passion, it is my love. And I think of the things that I do, like this podcast and our weekly blog and sending out our favorite things newsletter every Thursday. I think of those things, even Instagram posts and Instagram stories, I think of those things as like I get to do. I have the pleasure of doing that. It is such a delight to me that I have that opportunity and ways to share things that hopefully make other people's lives easier, or saves them some time, or maybe helps them think about things a different way, especially when it comes to our health and our daily lives and our rhythms, and just trying to be a little bit more intentional and tuned in and aligned with how we really want to be and how we really want to act and how we really want to move through our days. So to me, it is this joy for the most part. For the most part, of course, I have my days. But it is also just as important to take time to actually take a break, to disconnect, to more fully sink into your life right in front of your eyes. And to me, it was such a special time to do that. And I try to do that a few other times throughout the year, but it's rare that it's 2 to 3 weeks of a time. It's also this big change in transition. And for me, because I am such a summer loving girl, maybe some of you are like this, that the transition from summer into fall has typically in the past always been one that has been a little bit more challenging, or I feel a little bit more resistant to it. I just never want summer to end. I love everything about it. And so that, like celebrating the peak, having that extra space, that rest, that downtime, not feeling bad about it, actually feeling great about it, and even trying to pass that along to others with even on my team. Hey, this is what we're going to do. I hope that this gives you some time to sink back into your lives and reflect a little bit and take some time for yourself, and just the things that we never really typically do or make the space for. I do think it's important and so helpful if it is possible in your life, in your schedule, to block out some time like that. And maybe it's just the weekend or it's a long weekend. There doesn't have to be massive amounts of days strung together to get that same experience. But that's definitely something that has been a game changer for me. This is hilarious because that was the longest intro ever to just basically tell you that this episode today is going to be just a general life update. How have things been going? What are the things I've been loving? What are the things I've been learning? What are the things I've been thinking about, considering? I feel like there is always so much, even in just one season itself. And so my hope is to be able to do these once a season, maybe even reflecting on the past, 3 months or so, because it is wild when you actually sit down to think about it. If you are a person that loves growing and you are always open and looking for the next opportunity to be reflective and thinking and wanting to live this more intentional life, there are millions of opportunities and chances for us to be learning and growing and always learning something new about yourself. I find that so fascinating. The work is never done. You're never just done and then you can just coast the rest of your life. That would be so boring. I feel like there's always things that come up that are either on your heart, on your mind, or there's circumstances that life is giving to you because it's the perfect time for you to learn that lesson. And sometimes they're lessons that we want to learn and sometimes they're not. So today I wanted to share a little bit more just about this past season and the things that have been going on, because I think especially so when you see me on stories and things that I'm just starting to talk about more, I always really, truly try to take time and just experience something new myself before I'm sharing it. So this, is true. If I've ever shared some product or something that I've tried, it's because behind the scenes, I've been doing that for at least 2 months on my own, just testing it. And I will never share something if I don't genuinely love it or genuinely use it myself. I'm always doing all these experiments and testing, and this is totally a part of my work and what I love doing. And it helps me coach other people one-on-one and to share things of here's how I'm using this, here's why I'm using this, here's what's going on. So hopefully today's episode will just encapsulate a lot of the things of what's going on in my life, and hoping that me sharing this gives you some things to think about or consider, or maybe they're things that you're like, yep, I already do that, or I've never even heard of that. Either way, it's just a time to chat and catch up. Let's start with some of the things that I've just been loving lately. And I'm sure that these are a lot of things that you've probably seen me mention or in passing, but let's dive into them. So the first thing that I have been doing that I've just been loving so much, and TBD if this continues into the fall, because a lot of it was maybe a little weather dependent. I would like to think not, that I'm an all seasons person. But something that I have been doing lately that has just been changing the game for me is doing a walk in the morning, around 15 minutes, so nothing crazy, a walk in the morning while listening to a meditation. And for those of you who have been around for a while, you know that my relationship to meditation it's something that I want to be doing, but I also feel like in this season of life, it's not something that happens like super consistently. And it is something that I think does come a little bit easier to me in the fall and in the winter when it's really rainy and it's dark right when you wake up in the morning and it's just kind of gray. That internal sunshine, which is really kind of how I think of meditation, like getting your mind right and setting yourself on the frequency of what you want to operate on instead of operating on the frequency of, if you're like me, when you wake up, you're not super happy and bubbly and positive. I am not. So I often need moments throughout my morning to be, what are we doing? How do we want to be thinking? How do we want to be feeling? How do we want to approach that day? So having the ability in the summer to take 2 things that I love, and this is something you could maybe take in your own life, something that I want to be doing more of, that I know is so good for me, that I know that helps me mentally or physically, with something that I love already, which is taking a walk. So pairing the thing that I want to do more of, meditation, with the thing that I already like doing, boom, you naturally are so much more inclined to want to do that activity. This is called habit stacking. You're taking something you already do and you're adding a little extra thing to it that's going to boost or help you. A silly example would be like if you're brushing your teeth and let's say you have a goal of wanting to do 10 squats a day to work on your muscle and your core, all the important things. But if you're already brushing your teeth, then trying to add something to that. Now, I think you can probably get crazy by trying to multitask and do all the things and not do them well, but something about walking and listening to a meditation, I think because nature is so powerful for me, walks on their own feel powerful. If I'm not listening to anything, which is actually a challenge I've been trying to also do, silent, not podcast, not always something in my ear, but actually just quiet, looking at the trees. I feel like meditation is a way to help me to do that a little better. Of looking at where the sunlight is coming through the trees or looking at different plants around me and focusing on breathing and getting more oxygen and air into my system, especially early in the day. I am just loving it. I come back from those 10 or 15 minutes, and I don't do it every day, but a few times a week. Like, wow, I feel like a complete reboot. Whereas sometimes I tell myself I don't have time to do a meditation and to do a walk, to try and fit in all these things in my day while also working, while also taking care of my kids, the hundreds of things that you want to be doing, but finding little mini ways maybe you could combine two things like that. So I love it because it's the physical part. I'm getting air in my lungs. I'm like moving my body. I'm getting circulation and getting my blood moving, which helps me feel more awake. And then I'm also like mentally working out my mind at the same time as doing my body. And so that has just been a lovely thing and something I would encourage you to try if you feel like the thought of sitting still and listening to something. I know that can feel so uncomfortable, especially if you've never done that before, but that's probably why you're wanting to start meditating to begin with. So you probably know you need it, but I feel like this could be a good bridge or a helpful thing. Listen to a meditation while you're on a walk and you get both benefits. Next thing that I have been loving, and I just need to share this to anyone who will listen, even though some of you are going to be like, I've been doing this for years, but I, in the beginning of the summer, started doing reformer Pilates classes, like group classes. They're small classes on the reformer. And it's something that I've always been interested in, but I had tried one or two classes before and I was like, this doesn't work for my body. It doesn't feel good. The classes were so, fast paced. There's a little bit of a learning curve to figure out the moves and what they're trying to cue you on the machine. So many straps and pulls and all these different things. But I was at a place where, as most of you know, I was recovering from a back injury when I think June was about 9 months or 10 months old, completely threw out my back, herniated disc, couldn't walk for 2 or 3 months, super painful, had to be in a brace for 4 to 5 months, and have been doing my own version of PT for a year. And a lot of this is, yes, postpartum, but my pregnancies have been so very challenging that I am literally in bed flat on my back or throwing up for 6 to 7 months of the pregnancy. So therefore, I lose all of my muscle. And then when all your joints are all loose and you have this beautiful tiny baby and you're doing a lot of carrying and holding, especially with 2 kids, my back and my body had no real muscle left or support. And I was trying to squeeze it in these 10, 15 minute increments. Anyways, all of these things added up to this perfect storm of my back not doing so great. So I had been doing PT every week for almost a year, and that helped me so much to get out of pain and to learn the exact right exercises and modifications. And then I was ready to take it to the next level and really ready to commit to building my muscle back, focusing on strength. I've always been pretty good about being active, taking walks, and I love riding my Peloton once or twice a week. But the strength part of it was something that just on my own, I was not getting very far. I remember when we went on a trip in June that there was this TRX strap at the gym of the hotel we were staying at, and there was a Pilates reformer, and it just kind of got me thinking, like, that's something else I've never tried. It's strength-based, but it's also slow. The point of it is to go slow. And I have been loving it. Like it feels so right in my body. Of course, the beginning was hard because I was starting from not a lot, and it just feels like exactly what I wanted. Probably why it's so popular with women who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, especially if you've had kids. It's all of the muscles and so focused on your core. And I love how the music is fast and fun, but the cueing and the actual work is about how slow and intentional you can do it. And it has just lit this fire in me that I'm like, yes, this feels so good to feel more supported in my body again and to not feel like things are just so loosey goosey and all my joints. And how I hurt my back was moving a bag from the trunk into the stroller. That one tiny motion was enough to throw my back out completely. So I have just been obsessed with going, and it has made me feel so much more integrated in my whole body and so much more balanced because it uses your entire body at the same time while also being gentle on your joints and free to modify however you need to. I just keep telling Kyle, I think I found my lifetime sport. That and maybe pickleball. But I can't do tennis anymore, even though I played in high school. It's just like too much twisting. I've had knee surgeries and all these different things since I played. This, though, feels like something I can do for decades. And that thought gets me so excited. And I must be of a certain age now where I'm excited by that. But I feel like in the last 2 years have been so much more focused on thinking about my health in terms of longevity. The way that I eat, is this a way that I could eat forever? We always have changes and fluctuations in what our bodies need in terms of food, and that changes. But in terms of general way of eating, for me, that's real food. I can maintain this and do this. It's simple, it's easy. I know that it's good for me and it feels right. And so thinking about everything in that lens, is this something that I can do? Is this sustainable? Is this something that it's going to help my body grow more strong and gracefully as I age? Versus it being something about the hardest workout or the fastest workout or what gets your heart rate up the most and all of that intensity around it. I want to be healthy for as long as possible, like decades. And that mentality has been different for me. It's changed some things about how I've been doing things in terms of that more long-term lens versus that quick fix, what's going to get me immediate results now without thinking about, well, what's that going to do to my body long-term? So anyways, major fan. I would encourage you, if you have a studio, just try it. If that's something that you're looking for, is strength, but slow, wanting to build muscle as you age, because we lose muscle. And especially as women, I think over the age of 30 is when we start losing muscle. So finding ways to do that also feel fun. And by the way, I don't think I had taken a class outside of the house. I think because of COVID and because of when my kids were born, it's been at least 5-6 years. And I used to go multiple times a week. But even that outing, like even the drive, I just have a few more minutes in my own energy and in my own space. And this time that's dedicated just to me. Just to me, to my body, to feeling more integrated, to that mind and body connection, of time to practice that. And just for this short time in the day, just think about me and not having that be a selfish thing, but having that be something that I'm doing so that I can be strong, so that I can run around with my kids, so that for decades of my life, I can be there and present and healthy. That's what it's all about. Here's something else I'm loving that's so random and so funny, but I am looking in the mirror and smiling because in August, I decided with my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law and one of her friends, we all have August birthdays, and we were all randomly talking about, I don't even know how we got on the subject, but piercing our ears. I was saying, I've always wanted to get a second piercing. I have my ears pierced and I've always wanted another one. And then we're like, yeah, me too. And my mother-in-law was like, oh, I need to get my original one just re-pierced because it closed up. So we did this hilarious outing of all the August women, went down to the tattoo parlor and piercing studio, which we stuck out like sore thumbs. I'll just say it. It was so funny. And got our ears pierced. And it has been something that I guess I've just always thought about for so long, but never made the time for, or just kind of, oh yeah, maybe I'll do that one day. And I've never found the time. So doing it with friends or people that you love, it was this great little outing, just a weekend outing for a couple hours. And I loved it. And it has been a lot more work to take care of, I will say, than what I do remember of originally getting my ears pierced. So it did make me think when June is ready, if she wants that. But I'm going to wait until she's actually ready to take care of it, do all the saline spray and stuff. But I think the older that I get, I'm realizing I just love a little bling. I just love a little sparkle, especially in everyday wear, where most of the time I am wearing yoga clothes for the most part, or workout clothes, that there's something that I love. And you guys know this. You've seen I wear 3 necklaces. I never take them off. I'm having a little sparkle or a little something extra, even when I'm wearing something that doesn't even match. I love it. It just makes me feel more put together. And so I love that I did that. And that I did that at this age is kind of funny, but it's never too late. And I think going with friends or making a date or making an appointment, maybe that's even to go to a workout class or to meet a friend for a walk or to do something, it's always so much easier to show up to that commitment when you know that somebody else is meeting you there. So just one of the tiniest things that I'm loving is just bringing me so much joy. Next, I will say I have 2 tiny little tweaks that I've been doing for my supplement game. And I did a whole blog post on my favorite supplements and how I believe in rotating them. So every season I do something slightly different or change something or take something out, add something new. And so this past season, I have been doing minerals and adding them in right in the morning. And minerals have this proven benefit to really help with kind of the vein things like your hair and your skin and your nails. And I've definitely noticed all of those things, but it also helps with your immune system. Like, what better way to prep for fall and winter immune compromising seasons than to really boost it in the summer and see how that sets me up or changes things. So I heard this brand called Water and Wellness on a podcast. They did an interview with the founder, and it was fascinating. It was these deep sea minerals harvested from this very specific place. And something in my brain got triggered because he was talking about how women who are pregnant and they have minerals, that their babies are so much more mineralized, and usually because of that have better immune systems, and that in pregnancy, the babies take a lot of minerals and a lot of nutrients from the mother. So I'm like, oh, well, I've had 2 kids. I could probably use, a boost in that. And I think coupled with the fact too, that even if you are eating real food, it is hard to get the right minerals that we need. It used to exist a lot more because of farming and the way things were cultivated and grown, but now it doesn't. So I've been trying these little glass ampules, and you break corners. I'll show it on my stories, but it's been amazing. It's this teeny tiny thing. It's one tiny sip, tastes like salt water. And then I move on to my chlorophyll, and it just feels like I covered that base, and my hair and my nails are growing like crazy. So that has been a great thing. The second supplement that has been really fun this past season, and I'm loving, I just want to tell all of my friends and tell my sister and my family, the Symbiotica magnesium packets. It's almost like these little goo packets. And you can put it in water, and it tastes like a dessert water. Vanilla cream is the flavor, and it's just sweetened with a little bit of glycerin and some almond butter, I think. So it wouldn't be great if you have nut allergies, but it's sweet. And so what I've been loving is, instead of having a little something for dessert after dinner, that becomes my transition into nighttime. It's like my little treat, even though that sounds so funny. It's magnesium, it's a supplement, but magnesium does help your body regulate cortisol. It brings your stress levels down. It's so good for sleep. It's so good for digestion. It's so good for hormone balancing and cycles. It's this amazing nutrient that most of us as women are deficient in. And the way that this comes, they're little travel packs. You can take it as a goo pack straight. The flavor to me is a little intense for that, but sometimes I do that. And I just have been loving that instead of dessert. It feels like such a win-win. It's sweet, it tastes good, it's a little treat, it's like this moment for myself, and it has all these benefits. Next thing I have been loving, and I'm sure a lot of you have been seeing this, but I have been deep in my kids' and families' recipes. You guys, it's almost been like a year and a half or 2 years that I've been working on these, but silently. I don't know if these are ready, but these are just the things that I'm cooking for my family that are working when you don't have a ton of time, you have little kids, or maybe even older kids. If you're working and you're doing a bunch of stuff and you want to eat real food, how does that look? And while I have always said, and I still believe to this day, that all of my recipes are family friendly, all of them are designed to be simple, to be as minimal on the ingredients as possible while still giving you a lot of flavor, that there has been some other things that I understand more now. I think about having young eaters or the concept of eating as a family. How does that look? And I have probably over 145 recipes, everything from all the baked goods that I do for them in the morning, but they're made with banana as the base or applesauce. So it's not these crazy high spikes of sugar, specifically in the morning, to dinner ideas and soup ideas that work well, even for kids. And how does that work? So that we're eating basically the same thing. I'm not having to make separate meals. We're all eating real food. And it's like probably 15 minutes or less to prep. So it's taking Simply Real Health recipes to the next level. They're kind of like comfort food style recipes. So I've had all of these recipes and I have been trying to figure out, what do I do with these? Is this another guide like I did with the baby food files? Is this even a cookbook? I don't know, maybe. But these recipes would also work if you just have picky eaters, let's say like your partner or other people in your house. Maybe they're not kids at all. So I've just been toying and playing around with this. And then I have had moments of panic of, well, I don't know, this helps me, but is this really going to help other people? Like my kids eat a certain way, they eat the way we do because I've raised them that way, because I really care a lot about it and I'm passionate about it. And the way I've fed them since they were tiny, since they first started eating food, has been in a very specific way to keep their taste buds open, to trying new things, to not become picky, and to basically be pretty easy to feed. However, I know so well and so clearly that that is not the case for most families and for most people. And I want to try and help. I think the easiest way is to start the youngest you can. But I do know that there are kids that are older and maybe that window was missed, or you didn't know as much or weren't thinking about it as much, but now it's become this bigger problem. So my question has been, will these recipes, they work for us, they work for my kids, they work for our family, do they work for others? So I came up with this idea to do a recipe testing group, which I'm sure some of you have seen me mention. We are almost close to closing that group because we had so much interest, which is just so encouraging to think, yes, this is something that people are wanting some ideas for. So we're going to do a little recipe testing group with a small community of you. And I'm so excited. Like just even that thought of taking away some of the fear that I had and the resistance of, well, let's just take these for a test run in other people's houses and see how it goes. What are the favorites? What are the things that worked well? What are the things that are not? And I think having that more community feedback and aspect, when I think back on it, that's how the first cookbook was created, was because I was writing all the seasonal meal plans, and then I would get hundreds of people's feedback on those specific recipes and what they loved. And there was always these patterns of what people loved and the ones that had the most feedback. So this is something I'm just so excited to do with some of you. And thank you for those of you who did sign up and show interest. I think it's going to be a really interesting process. It may be overwhelming for me to be getting all of this different feedback from different families, but I think overall it's really going to help this goal I have of wanting to help other families and other moms, and even just sharing some tips and what other people do. So that is something that's just really exciting me right now. It's something that has been in the works for almost 2 years in my brain, writing it down, sharing the stuff I haven't gotten to yet. So this will be the first time that I'm sharing some of these recipes and opening myself up to some of the feedback, which either way I'm excited for. Either way, it will confirm that these are helpful for families besides ours, or eaters that weren't specifically raised from day one eating real food. So TBD on that, just something fun working on behind the scenes over here. Something else that I have been just loving is gardening. And this makes me smile because I used to think of it as such a thing that older people did. And now I just love it. I've been loving it all summer. I did it a couple years ago before we moved, before I had my second baby. And I loved it then too. It was just like something so peaceful about being outside, but you have a little task at hand, like weeding or watering or, whatever you're doing, thinking about what you want to plant. And now I'm excited to go beyond just summer gardening and start to fill in our yard a little bit more. So learning about the flowers and bushes and shrubs, but also continuing to learn about the food side. This week, I have plans to go to the gardening store to get some carrots to try and some beets to plant and some of the darker leafy greens. And it's been so fun. I think just even seeing my kids finding delight in it. We planted a bunch of radishes that were super easy to plant for kids. And my kids were eating radishes just because they could pull them from the ground. And so it's just a reminder, if you need that connection to where our food comes from, what real food is, and how cool it is. Like how cool it is that you can grow something like in the dirt in your backyard and that it's something that you could eat. And I love the excuse to be outside, get fresh air. It's been a fun activity that I'm doing with my kids that feels a little educational, but also very joyful for me selfishly. And being able to teach them and show them how things are grown has just been really, really fun. What else? There's been so many fun things. I also have been realizing too, I think maybe in that 3-week time period of taking a break from the podcast, how much I do love it and how much I'm just so grateful to have this space. Even in that 3-week time where we took a break from posting new episodes, I got so many messages just about a lot of the other previous episodes that we've done of how much more in depth they are and how much more actually helpful they are, because it's talking about the nuance of a lot of things, especially related to your health or motherhood. It's that I think that we're oftentimes missing. Like when we see these quick clips from people's lives or the 15 seconds, or you just have all these assumptions around how somebody's life is or the way that they're dealing with things and how they handle stuff day to day. And I just really appreciate having this space go deep because that's how I am as a person. And there's not that much that you can really show or share in that way on other platforms. And so I am just loving this, and I'm so just freaking proud of myself for getting over all my fear around it and knowing that it is something that I will hopefully continue to get better at as we go. That's the hope. But taking on that challenge, I think, has been one of the most rewarding things that I have done. And I'm just loving doing that. Also, on that note, something I'm just loving, which is something I brought back from the archives, was doing one-on-one coaching. I have been having so much fun. I think I even said this in the last life update because it has been maybe around 5 months that I've been doing it. But I do group coaching. I run my group program once a year, sometimes twice. And I love that container. I'm obsessed with it. It's my favorite time of year. But there is something so special about having a one-on-one, very deep friendship with someone. And you talk about all these things, like so deep. You really go there. We really address stuff head on to the root of things. And I love that because people heal so much faster. They get to where they're wanting to go so much quicker when they're just ready to dive in and do it. And that part has been so much fun for me. So just something I'm loving doing. I will open up spots once a quarter because most of them are doing 6 weeks at a time or 12 weeks at a time. So then I have those spots opening up, but it's just been so much fun to reinvigorate that side. It is something that I just love doing. I feel like it is something that I have been gifted with. I will say, just figuring out the nuances of other people's lives and the questions to help them ask themselves and figuring out where they stand with certain things is like a puzzle piece to me of figuring out these different components and different levers we can pull and tweak and play. So just been adoring that and feel very reinvigorated in my work, which is great. And this is probably a great segue to move into the things I've been learning. And I will start by saying, because it really connects to this last thought, there was a time back in the spring when I was having, I would call it an up level, just a time where it feels like a lot of things are maybe going quote unquote wrong or not flowing, or you feel kind of stuck or stagnant, or you're like, why is this stuff happening? And it seems kind of out of nowhere. And it's these times where I have learned, at least now, to not look at those and be like, oh, it's bad. It means this. I should stop doing this, or what's the point of doing that? But just starting to take that in stride of, no, this is an up level, like an intense period of growth. And it's being given to me or handed to me because this is what I need to take it to the next level. And usually taking it to the next level means mentally of how you're thinking about things. It's this overall raising your perspective and raising your vibration and being able to see what is truly there for you to be learned. And I had one of those in the spring where I was having some moments of like, do I just shut this all down? This seems like it is a lot to be doing right now. And I think with the age of my kids being very young and me wanting to be with them as much as possible and all of the support and help that is required for me to be able to do both things, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of logistics and a lot of like a mental, I don't want to call it a mental load, but like a mental tray that you're carrying and balancing all these things. And I did have, and I'll say it, a couple of weeks of, I don't know, is this working anymore? Is this the right setup of what's feeling good to me right now? And I think having those questions for yourself is very good and healthy and normal to be doing and checking in with yourself often. It prevents, I think, getting stuck in something that doesn't feel good or isn't feeling aligned, and you just going with it because you're afraid to rock the boat or change things or, make some sort of move for yourself. And I knew that it was this up-level process, but I will say it did not feel easy at the time. And I had a lot of mornings where I had to sit down and journal, and times just talking through stuff with Kyle, which really helps me a lot, and just reflecting, like really trying to connect into what is feeling good to me right now and aligned, and what do I want to do here? What are the things I know for sure? What are the things that I love? What are the things I would be doing no matter what? What are the things that maybe I'm ready to let go of? And I will say that this season moving into summer was one of the best summers that I can ever remember, because I really saw it through on that back end where things did feel hard and more challenging and nothing was really lining up the way that I was hoping for. And it just was such a reminder to me to really have faith in those seasons. Like, the times when it doesn't feel easy, it's because there's just so much working in your favor to get you to this realization or aha moment or point where you're like, okay, what if I try this instead? Or that freedom to mix things up a little bit until you feel like things do feel a little bit better to you. And so just a reminder of having that faith and holding the faith, even when all you feel is doubt or you're unsure or you're not sure what the next move is, coming back to that place of trust that you are always being led, you're being held, you're being guided, that it's not that bad things are happening to you or why is this happening to me, that victim mentality, but it's all happening for you, and trusting that process, but also not just blindly trusting it, but doing the work behind the scenes to help yourself out, helping yourself move forward even when it doesn't feel super easy. So I just feel so relieved to say that all that work was worth it, and I am feeling reinvigorated and really excited and focusing on the stuff that I like, and I've let go of a lot of stuff that wasn't really working. And I don't even need to go on the specifics of that because it's probably so boring, and a lot of it is work-related things, but just like not being afraid to mix it up has been such a good lesson that I've been learning over and over again. The second thing I've been learning is that I shared in my previous life update how I was playing with my relationship to drinking and my relationship to alcohol. And even though it's never been a crazy relationship of any kind, it's been pretty, I would say, steady, normal, nothing really to comment on. In my last update, I was sharing how I just have been drinking so much less. It just did not sound as good to me. I mean, even since June has been born, which is now 2 years ago, that the enticing part of it just is not really there for me. And I have found that the longer I have followed that intuitive hit to just be like, well, I'm not going to force myself to have it if it doesn't sound good, or just even if other people are. I'm actually just going to check in with myself in every circumstance where I know that it will be there or where I know it's a part of the evening or event. And I'm just going to sit with myself for a couple minutes before I go into that event and think through, How do I feel right now? Where is my energy at right now? Where is my mood at right now? Is this something that would enhance the experience? It's got to be to a huge degree, because I feel not great the next day. So it really is this sacrifice of, do I want to steal a little bit from tomorrow's joy and energy and patience and good sleep? Is this event or time worth it to me? And also being very clear with myself of which of those drinks work well for me and which don't. And clearly putting the ones that don't and do not make me feel good, they're not even an option. So it's really narrowed things down quite a bit. I know that I could do, if you want to be very specific about it, a skinny margarita. So it's just basically tequila, club soda, lime juice, and a tiny splash of Cointreau. And that's something I typically have only done on vacation, or if it's been like a big event and it sounds good, probably typically on a weekend. And here's the thing is, like, I only do one now. I don't need to do multiple. I just do one. Sometimes I've gotten a couple sips in and I'm like, nope, this is not doing it for me right now. And I just happily just put it down and move on. And I think the thing that I'm learning is the less that you have it around in normal daily life, the less you go for it, the less good it sounds, the better you start to feel, and specifically the better you start to sleep. But I have found this place of, I don't know, just being very intentional with it. And it feels really good to not have to be, I'm not doing it at all, completely all or nothing. And I understand that some people need to do that, or it works better for them to do that. And that's great. You do you. But I also feel like it's not very talked about, like what that middle ground looks like in between of maybe you do choose to have it for a certain situation or very specific thing. It's like almost a medicinal purpose versus because other people are, because that's what you normally do, because that's what's socially expected of you. I just feel like I've grown a lot. Like I'm learning a lot about myself. I actually do feel very confident in my own self. I don't need to impress other people. I don't need to do it because other people are. And that has made me feel, because I think even at a younger age, I probably would have, just to fit in or to not want to make other people feel uncomfortable if I was saying no. But now I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care what other people think. I don't care what other people are doing. You do you. I'm just like, I feel completely fine without doing it because it's something social. So right now it's been vacation, but mindfully, I'm still asking myself, does it sound good? And a lot of times it doesn't, and that's fine too. And sometimes it really does, and it's amazing, and I can savor it, and I love it. And it's just more like I'm not doing it to relieve stress or to numb from anything. I'm doing it to be more present and fully in that experience or moment. And then on date night, I will. Sometimes not, but that also feels like a very intentional moment in time. And so it has been such a growing process the last 6 months of like, what does that look like for me? It doesn't need to look like it does for anybody else, but what does it look like for me to be much more confident in myself and much more tuned in? And it's been fascinating because I actually find myself like not having a drink when I'm with people that I'm like truly comfortable with, if that makes sense. People that I'm such deep friendships that I know they don't care what I'm doing. I don't care what they're doing. It's that feeling. And so maybe it's also a sign of being surrounded with people who truly know you and truly understand you. So anyways, just all that to say, no judgment on this at all. It's just something that I personally have been learning, testing, playing, experimenting, and it's gotten to a place where I feel really confident that I can know what my body wants and what feels good to me in that moment, in that particular setting, without having these rules around it. That has definitely been a learning lesson. Something else that I am learning and just practicing and trying to do a little bit more is having more eye contact with my kids and with my husband, but more eye contact in general. And when I first was thinking about this, I'm like, it sounds so creepy to say it like that. But eye contact meaning you're not doing anything else. You're not on your phone. You're not distracted doing chores and a million things. I feel sometimes because my time feels so precious in each bucket of my life that I'm trying to multitask a lot. Or when I am with my kids, that I'm like also trying to put away the laundry, and I'm also trying to wipe down the counter, and I'm also trying to do the dishes. And I have just been trying to practice and think about what if you just gave them more uninterrupted eye contact And not all the time, but choosing moments to actually sit down. So in the morning with breakfast, I've usually been unloading the dishwasher and I'm packing a lunch or cutting up the snack or cleaning up from breakfast. And I've just chosen to try and sit down. This is not every day. I'm not perfect at this, but a couple times a week to sit down at the table with them and just drink my matcha and look at them, and talk to them when I'm not distracted doing other things. And it has made such a difference. I'm not sure for them, but for me, in terms of feeling actually more connected to my kids and seeing them. Like they change so quickly, but those moments just truly take them in and how magical they are. They're freaking magical. They're these little unicorns walking around. They're so pure and they're so innocent and they're so sweet. And they have these funny, hilarious things that they're doing and saying and thinking about and things that they want to play or do. And wow, like you could easily miss that if you're trying to be a productive person and like get stuff done and feel organized in your house or in your life. But I've been putting that second tier to wanting them to know that I see them and that I have moments. This is not all the time, but I have moments where I am trying to build that into my day a little bit more. And I think back to growing up, my parents didn't have phones they were on or computers, or what would that be like to experience somebody who's constantly on the move, doing something else, or looking at this screen while kind of paying attention to you. And there's a part of modern day life that's hard to get away from. And I also feel like it's hard to maybe put that idea into a parent's head because there's already so much what feels like pressure and things that need to get done. But it's just been a reprioritization in my head of, yes, those things do need to get done, or I would like them to be done. That would be ideal. However, if it takes me a little bit longer, or if I don't do it right now, maybe choosing a time when they're doing something else, maybe coloring or drawing or, whatever, playing Legos or blocks, like that could be the time where you're doing other things. But when they are sitting there or having a meal or they're playing something, more eye contact, I feel like has been a simple thing that has changed a lot for me in terms of what I'm putting as my first priority versus second or third, or like the urgency that I have behind some tasks that are not urgent, but then I'm like making urgent in my head. There's a huge difference. And just like getting real with myself on that. Something else that I heard, and I always find it so helpful, I think, especially in a busy life, but like just trying to have like 5 or 10 minutes with each of your kids every day. I mean, maybe not every day, but like a couple times a week, 5 minutes of uninterrupted time where you are letting them guide whatever they want to do or play or imagine, that you let them be in charge and you're just there to enjoy it and play along. Just 10 minutes of whatever they want to do. And that to me does feel like it alleviates some of that pressure to always be on and super present and in every moment. That would be exhausting because there is so much, I think, with raising kids that does have to be done. I just love coming back to that. 5 minutes with each of them feels so doable, but it is something that I'm constantly needing to remind myself of and constantly needing to learn. So that's definitely been a big thing, I think, specifically this last season. Something else that is so funny, but has just been this great reminder to me because it is everything that I teach and talk about, where it's about food in general. And when you are eating more intuitively, so to me, that means just eating real food, but then you actually start listening to what is sounding good and what does it feel like your body needs more of. And you can get into grooves where maybe for 3 months or even 6 months, your body does really well with certain foods or like simple combinations of things, and they just like work and you know that it's working for you. And then sometimes we get into this rhythm. We just keep doing the same thing because it's always what we've done versus actually starting to listen. Is that still working for me? Is that still helpful? Like, is that still beneficial to where I'm at right now? So I've had a shift in this recently that just is like, oh, right. And that's what happens. Our bodies are constantly changing, which is why it is so helpful to learn about real food and which categories and combinations of real food work for you and your body. This is what Simply Real Life, the method, is all about, the group program that I run. It's teaching us, this is what we do in one-on-one coaching, is teaching you how to get more connected to your body so you can actually read the signals and signs that your body is giving you. And for most of us, it's such a disconnected relationship, what our body needs and what it's telling us. There are millions of messages every single day, but we oftentimes ignore them. We're not taught what those signals are or how to read them or interpret them or what that feels like. Most of us are just so wildly disconnected from our bodies in general, and we just want to go on autopilot. We just want it to be easy. We just want to not think about things. We want to eat the same thing every day. We want to not change things up because our brains hate change. However, our bodies thrive with it. So this past season, I've just been reminded, because I think since I've had, definitely being pregnant, I cannot do any meat at all. And then interestingly enough, even in that postpartum time after giving birth, not interested. I was not interested in meat, like chicken, turkey. It just did not sound appealing to me. It didn't feel good. Every time I had it, it would kind of feel heavy and my digestion would feel off. And it just didn't feel like it was serving me. So I was doing a lot more beans, a lot more quinoa, a lot more nut butters. And then over the summer, and I think it kind of is, coinciding a little bit with starting Pilates and doing more weights and strength, that all of a sudden, that does sound good to me. Like having a grass-fed burger sounds good to me now. I'm like, oh, interesting. Okay, so I'd have it. And then even like a couple days later, I'm like, where am I at in my cycle? Okay, not typically at a place where that would sound good. And so it's just been this interesting thing where I'm like, all right, good quality meat is back on the table. It's just fascinating, actually letting my body lead. And now the same foods that before didn't feel good are feeling, they're giving me so much energy, and I feel really satiated by it, and my digestion's fine. Like it doesn't feel too heavy. So it's so interesting to me. And I am in a much different season and a much different stage right now than what is required of my body being pregnant, what is required postpartum, what's required nursing, where I need a lot more grain heavy things versus meat. And so I don't know, just been this reminder to me that our bodies are constantly changing. And the only thing that you really can count on is that relationship to yourself, and that relationship of being able to be in tune with your body enough, which is a learned art. That is what I teach. That is what I talk about. That is why it's so important to be connected to your own body, because we are changing. Like the seasons change, the types of foods that are in seasons change, warm foods versus cooling foods versus more meat-based or protein-based versus more grain versus more fiber. It depends where you're at, where your body's at, what season of life you're in. And just that reminder, like it's okay and it's good for things to change and for your body to have exposure to different foods, and you're getting different nutrients from different types of food. So having that like variation, I think is super, super helpful. I'm laughing to myself. So I'm like, this is probably one of the longer episodes. How could I have just broken this up? But here you go. This is what would be talking about if you were my friend. These are all the things that I'm sharing with my close friends and people and family around me. So let's move on to things I'm thinking about and considering. One of the things that I am considering doing, because we did it last year, is because there is this very big transition from summer energy into fall energy. And there's so much that can change with that, like not only the weather, drastic change, not only schedules, especially if you have kids that go to school, drastic change, not only the daylight, drastic change, activities, maybe workouts that feel good, drastic change. That something we did last year was to open up Simply Real Life, the method, but do a self-guided version of it. But it's not completely self-guided, because I feel like it's so helpful to be in the energy with other people and other women doing it. So we did like a self-guided version where it's at your own pace, but yet also we have a group community and forum where we're checking in with each other. You can ask any questions. People have access to the info at the same time. So it's something that if you didn't want to do it in the 6 weeks it's lined out and you need to stretch it out longer, great. But we would be there. I would be there. My team would be there as resources for you, and asking questions and having all the support and just questions to ask yourself and little weekly homework assignments. And so I'm considering doing that again this fall, just because it's such a pivotal season for people. If they just go into the fall acting like they did in the summer, it generally leads to a place of not feeling so great by the time late fall and the holidays get here, and then end of the year. It can feel like this big blob or like big blur of time where people can get really unconscious with what they're doing. They just kind of fall into these patterns and start doing stuff on autopilot and without a lot of structure or intention behind it. So that's something I'm thinking about doing, but it only works that way if there's a number of people who want to do it together. So I'll probably put a question box up on Instagram soon. Is this something that you guys would be interested in? Just like spring is this pivotal change, I always kind of find that too on the flip side of fall, like getting more closely connected to yourself at this time of year is so helpful to give you the momentum to keep being healthy, even through the holidays, even into next year, where it's not like, oh, because it's a new year and then you start. Live in a way where you feel good most of the time. And there's random occasions and different things that come up, but for most of the time, you feel pretty rock solid in the things, the foods, the activities, the people, the boundaries that make you feel your best, and figuring out what those are, because it changes all the time. So what may be working for you now may be completely different than what worked last season or this time last year, and giving yourself that permission and time that we actually never give ourselves. When are you going to give yourself the time to learn yourself deeper, to learn yourself better, to learn yourself more fully? And that is the key pivotal piece. So if that's something that any of you are interested in, let me know. We do have a wait list, but I am curious specifically for a fall session. Is that something that you guys would want to do? Because I love doing it. I love the more women that could be lit on fire and connected to what they need and owning and knowing themselves best. And that makes the world a better place to me. Okay, something else I am thinking about is just fall in general, transitioning in. Every beginning of the season, I feel like I've been talking about this a lot, but I have to have a little one-on-one convo with myself of what are we going to make this fall about? What are the things I am excited about bringing or incorporating more? What are the things I want to be doing less of? What are the things that make me feel alive right now or specific for this season? How am I fully going to be present in this season? How am I going to get the most out of this? And what things do I need to watch out for? I know that my natural tendencies don't go that way. So what sort of things do I want to put in place for myself, or things I want to experiment with or try or test? So I haven't done that yet. And that's on my radar in the next week or two, to truly sit down and write down how I want to feel. And that's the key word. How do you want to feel? Not the things you want to achieve or check off or do, but how do you want to walk through this season? How do you want to feel for the most part? And then what things help you create that feeling? And they could be little things you can do every day. It could be something that you make a bigger thing that you make sure you do for yourself within that season. A lot of different ways create how we want to feel, different emotions or things you want to learn more about or dig more into. You could have multiple feelings that you're going for, but like knowing where you're going oftentimes will help us form our everyday, like habits. What are the habits that would help you get there? What are the little daily rituals or routines that would be so helpful in creating that feeling for yourself every day? So that's always where I start. I'm excited to do it. I haven't done it yet, so I feel like a little bit like floating around in the in-between of still doing my stuff from summer. The weather's still nice, at least right now. And then what's that going to look like? Cultivating and actively creating my life and the feelings and the structure in my day around the things that I want to be focused on versus life just like happening. So it's just a little bit of like designing your life and the pockets of time or the activities or what you want to be doing in your free time versus the default, which is oftentimes would be filled with scrolling your phone or social media or watching TV. All those things have their places, but without being checked of where those priorities lie for you and maybe what are some other things you would like to be pouring into. I just find that process so helpful. Last thing I'm thinking about, because I've mentioned this on Instagram, it's a deeply personal one. just thinking about whether I am done having kids or whether we want to have another baby. And this is something that just been questioned. It's always been open-ended. I used to joke around that I could have 4 kids, just have this vision of wanting this big family. I don't know. There's something about it that sounds so fun and kind of chaotic and just funny, but I think I kind of thrive in those settings sometimes. And it's been this open ended question. And so I'm only really sharing this because a lot of people message me after I shared. I'm not really sure yet. They asked, what are the questions that you're asking yourself or things that you're wanting? How are you walking yourself to an answer of whether you guys are wanting to do this or not? And so it's been something I've been thinking about. True. What are the questions I'm asking myself? Because I have some. There are things I'm thinking about. So the first one is, and I think this probably can apply to a lot of big life decisions, whether that's moving or a change in job or growing your family or a lot of different things, just a big life decision. So the first question that I have, and the thing that's been rolling around in my mind, is what would I need to feel both mentally and physically and probably emotionally healthy to have a third baby, to bring in a third child to our family? What would I need to have in place support-wise, emotionally, physically? What are the things that I know are the non-negotiables or the things that would be necessary for me to feel like a healthy version of myself, and healthy meaning mentally, emotionally, and physically? So that is like a list on its own in my journal. What would that mean? Ideally, right? Well, ideally, and for a lot of the things, I'm like, oh, well, I have to do that anyways because I have 2 kids. There's a lot of things of scale. I'm not sure it's really going to make that much of a difference for this particular area, but for this particular area, yes. Yes, it would. The second thing that I have been kind of asking myself is what would need to change? So to go from, it's a big transition to go from 1 to 2. That's also a question I've been asked a lot. I'm not sure I'm an expert on this, but a lot of people are asking, can you talk about the transition from 1 to 2? I feel like it's so personal. But if that's something that you would like me to talk about more, just send me a message on Instagram. I'm happy to at least speak to my experience on it. But for me to go from 2 to 3, what would have to change from how I'm doing stuff now or how we as a family have things set up now? And that's another list that I'm kind of working through. Is there any things that do not scale, would not work with 3 versus 2? That's what I'm curious about, because these are things that are so helpful to then be able to talk about with Kyle, my partner in this. We have to be full partners in this for it to work, at least for me. So what would that look like? And being able to talk through some of those things versus getting into it and then being overwhelmed. This isn't working. And then you're both frustrated and it creates a lot of conflict. So I'm just in the stage of trying to think through what would actually be changing, I think, at least from what I know, what would need to change? What do I need to have in place? Having that non-negotiables list, because let's be real, there's so much, I think, of having children that is on the mother. It is, because physically, in a lot of cases, the mother is the one who is thinking about the process of getting pregnant, prepping her body, planning for it. Her life is altered. Her body is the one that goes through this huge process, not only hormonally, but physically. So anyways, it's a huge conversation, a huge thing on my mind, and we're not in any rush, but it is something that we're thinking about. Okay, the last thing that I've been thinking about just on this topic is writing down and getting really honest with myself of what my fears are around it. I think a lot of times when we actually name our fear, you can then walk yourself to the point of okay, what would make that better? Is there anything that could solve that? Is that something I'm projecting? I'm making up that it's going to go the worst possible way? Or are they real legitimate things that can and should be talked through? And so for me, there's 2 parts of this. There's the physical part. So with my body specifically, and my pregnancies in the past have just been very hard, very intense on all levels, not being able to keep water down, IVs multiple times a week, being in the hospital, that whole thing But I was even laughing. I'm like, but that's not even all of it. It's the repercussions then after. It's the herniated disc in the back. And can my body physically handle another pregnancy without hurting or injuring myself for the long term? Probably need to go to a follow-up to my doctor, probably need to get my back looked at and get those things taken care of, and then being able to move on to the other fears in my head, or the mental space that would require, the amount of chaos level up from where it is now, and just all of the things I think that kind of go into it. So anyways, that is, everybody I know is so different on this. So this is not to say that like this is the way to do it, but because that was a question, it literally came in 9 different forms that day. How are you getting to the answer? How are you figuring it out? That's what I'm thinking about too, or I'm considering even 1 to 2 or 0 to 1, or what is that? I feel like I had a very similar process for 0 to 1, or even getting myself to think through is that something that I want at all? Hopefully those questions maybe help you if it's a different sort of transition that you are in, or decision that you're wanting to make or get closer to. Like, those in the past have been things that have always helped me. Okay. Last thing that I am thinking about and I feel pretty committed to is just having more time off of my phone. Just getting more and more clear with myself that my work is not my life, that my life is full and vibrant and beautiful, and that I show and share tiny glimpses of that, of things that I think could help other people, but that it's not my entire identity. It's not my entire value. It's not my entire thing. It's one part of my life that's big, but it's not everything. So it's just, I feel like a reminder, and something that as I grow older and as I really think about my priorities of things, I never want to be doing it because I feel like I have to, or to keep up, or to compare to other people. But what feels right to me in this season is having clear definitions for myself of, this is my work time, and this is what I want to share, and this is the community that I want to build. And I also want to build a community of people who are also kind of on that same page. Like, you want to have an intentional life. And a lot of times that means being off the devices, and even freaking off the podcast or off Instagram, or, whatever. Just having more time, I think, away from technology, devices, more time in nature, more time with my friends, more time with my family. I want more of that juiciness and that goodness. And I'm realizing phones are never going away. The apps are never going away. They're always just grabbing for your time and attention. And I feel like slowly, year after year, I just get like a little bit more disconnected from that intensity or the pressure of it, and just being like, I want to do this in a way that is feeling really good to me. So I hope that me even saying that or doing that can give you some permission to do the same. You don't have to have this as a daily part of your life. And I think it's an amazing way to connect, especially when it's well curated and you have stuff in there that inspires you and really lifts you up, and there's positive forces in your life. I think it's such a beautiful way to connect to that. And I do daily, but I also think it's just as important to build in some time and space where we're not always so deeply connected, so we can sink deeper into our actual daily lives. Okay, that was a long one. I hope there's something in there that was new, interesting, something maybe you want to try too, or things that you're thinking about. And I think the point of this is that we are always learning and always growing. And there's always things that we can be finding to love and to get excited about. And there's always things that may feel challenging or harder lessons that we need to learn, that maybe not necessarily wanting to learn, but needed to learn. And then there's always stuff that's going to be percolating. So I hope that me sharing some of the things that are going on in my world, in my life, the things I am thinking about, working through, loving, inspires you to think about what those things are for you in your life too. I love you so much. Thank you guys so much for being here, and we'll see you again next week. If you enjoyed this episode and want more like it, make sure you're subscribed to the Simply Real Life podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and maybe share it with a friend or two. That would mean the world.